Olá, pessoal. Hi, everybody. We're going bilingual today, Portuguese and English. And good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Hello, everyone. I'll just skip to Portuguese just a few minutes for our audience in Brazil about the school, Escola Livre de Artes. I'm Cláudia Dornbusch, as always here on Fridays on Cine dELA, talking about screens in any country, everywhere. Okay, let's switch shortly to Portuguese. Olá, pessoal. Uma lembrança, inscrevam-se no nosso canal. Se você gosta dos nossos conteúdos, se inscreva aqui. É legal ter vocês inscritos aqui. Somos quase 2.000 inscritos, ok? Estamos nos 1.800, logo, logo a gente chega nos 2.000, se você ajudar a gente, tá? E se você está assistindo, põe o positivo ali, tá bom? Se inscreve no canal, multiplica esse conteúdo, porque sextas e sábados nós temos programas sobre cinema, teatro, bastidores da cena, história do teatro brasileiro, muita coisa legal nas artes, ok? E outra coisa, você gosta de Shakespeare? Já leu Shakespeare? Não conhece Shakespeare? Agora é hora de ler todas as peças do Shakespeare aqui na escola. São 10 módulos, vocês estão vendo aí embaixo, com a Érica e com a Valéria, a um custo super acessível, ok? Lendo as peças, está para começar, ok? No começo, em meados de setembro, entra lá no site e se inscreve no nosso canal, ok? A gente vai adorar ver vocês ali. E temos outro curso, Arte de Ver, sobre cinema, com o Cássio Starling, esse crítico de cinema e um dos curadores da Mostra Internacional de Cinema de São Paulo. Como é que eu vejo um filme? Que detalhes são importantes, né? Atuação, câmera, enquadramento, etc, etc, etc. Muito legal, tá bom? Para se inscrever, é só entrar no site que está aqui, escolalivredeartes.com.br, ok? Tem tudo lá. E segue a gente no Instagram, ela, Escola Livre de Artes, para ficar atualizado, tá bom? Clica lá e vai seguindo a gente. Nós estamos aqui no Cine dELA, nome do nosso programa das sextas-feiras, que você não pode perder se você gosta de cinema, tá bom? E tem mais uma outra coisa que é bem legal. O Cássio Starling, ele tem uma letterbox, que é essa daqui que vocês estão vendo aqui, Dicas Cine dELA. Ele abre no letterbox, ele tem uma abinha, que é Cine dELA, tá aqui, Cine dELA, em que ele dá dicas de filmes que passam batido pelos festivais de cinema, que são pouco conhecidos, mas são top de linha, ok? Para vocês assistirem. Então não esquece de ir lá, tá bom? E nós vamos seguir com o nosso Cine dELA hoje, com um tema super especial e convidadas para lá de especiais, né? Nós vamos falar sobre um documentário que fala sobre gestação, civilização, futuro da humanidade, sobre epigenética. E a gente sim vai explicar aqui para quem não sabe. Well, let's talk about epigenetics, pregnancy and civilization and future. We'll get to know about it for those who never heard about it, about epigenetics. It's quite important. And I have two guests here, two very special women. They are Laura and Sarah Uplinger. Laura is the vice president of the Brazilian Association for Prenatal Education. Sarah is an actress and director who directed a short film. We'll talk about that. She has some experience, a long experience with the stages, screens, etc. And let's say hello. I'll stop talking now. And welcome, Laura and Sarah Uplinger. Hello. Let's put you on the screen.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
Fine, good to be with you. Good to be with Cine dELA. What an honor to be here. today.
Laura Laura was interviewed by Erika Botstein talking about OMRAM. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
So for those of you, just go to ELA TV, and ELA TV is on YouTube. And just look for Laura Uplinger, OMRAM, and you'll find the interview. Okay. Well, it's great. Mother and daughter together. Here's Sarah and Laura, and that's great. Some personal questions first. Tell me about that mixture, American Brazilian with a touch of French. How come?
Well, my parents were Brazilians, but they were from the south of Brazil, Curitiba, Paraná, and Porto Alegre, Rio Grande do Sul. But they got married in Montreal. My father was a diplomat. So my whole life as a child, I went on moving from country to country. And one day, and I was born in New York, and one day they had to choose what kind of school I was going to have. And the French system is the one that gives you the exact same curriculum, whatever year you are. If you're the first trimester of that year, even when you're little, you're studying exactly the same things. So they decided to have that. So I ended up going to school in French from the age of 7 till the end of university. It was all the time in French.
So you're fluent in 3 languages.
Yeah, French is the only one I studied. The other ones I just love them.
How about Sarah? With that curriculum from your mother, but you're multicultural as well.
So yeah, so I speak 3 languages, but she has me because I think she's at like 5, maybe 6 at this point. But
Spanish, Italian.
She's got the Spanish and Italian. I understand Spanish thanks to Portuguese. Yeah. Speaking it, I can eat my way through any Spanish-speaking country, but I don't know anything else. And then, I don't understand Italian all that much, but she was very helpful with the Italian part of the documentary and helping me with that translation. But I grew up speaking English. My dad only spoke English. He would try to learn other languages and it just wouldn't stay in his brain. So grew up speaking English with a mix of Portuguese, like rapidinho, vamos nessa.
I love it. Rapidinho, vamos nessa is excellent.
Rapidinho, vamos nessa. And so little things I could understand. And we'd go spend time with my grandparents in Brazil, in Rio. So definitely I heard it a lot. And then when I was 10, my parents decided, let's move to the south of France. And not speaking a word of French, they put me in a French school, and 6 months later, I was speaking French.
Listen to that. They put me in a French school. Okay. I couldn't decide.
They were like, you're going to learn French. Here you go.
This is what you call an immersion, right? A total immersion.
That's good.
Yeah, I didn't speak French. They didn't speak English, except our English teacher. She spoke English, but that was pretty much the only person at school who spoke English.
Okay. Only the English teacher. Okay. So that's interesting. Also for the future about that what we're going to speak now. We're talking about pregnancy, and we'll go to the documentary later on in a minute. Some people who don't know what that is, just let's talk a bit about epigenetics. What's that? What do we understand? How we understand epigenetics? How important is it?
Well, it's something that came as a novelty for science because throughout the 20th century, genetics was it. They had what they call the genetic determinism. Whatever your genes give you, you will develop. And once you're born, comes education. And towards the 80s, there was more and more biochemistry, cell biology, and suddenly in the 90s started from many parts of the world, a whole influx on something above genetics, something in us that will orchestrate how our genetic material will develop. So this is enormous because I might have very good genes or bad ones. But which ones are going to be silenced? which ones are going to be perhaps created, which ones are going to be exalted. It will depend on the atmosphere and the ambiance, the mother, the pregnant mother, and everything that surrounds her, of course, but how she sees life, how she perceives the world, and how she perceives herself. So it's amazing. It's a huge power, because even with a poor genetic material, I can have a great kid, and vice versa. I remember there was a very good disseminator teacher at Cornell University, Peter Nathaniels. He says anybody could louse up a Shakespeare. Here you have a person completely prepared genetically for epistemology, for rhymes, for philosophy, for thinking, for art and drama. But the mother is in the middle of so much anguish during pregnancy that all of that is going to be downplayed, and that person might have difficulty learning to read or write. This is the plight or the glory of our humanity.
Great words. I love that.
And he uses Shakespeare. I'm not just here because it's your field, but he really says, Peter Nathaniels, he quotes Shakespeare.
Yeah, it's wonderful. My question, can cells learn?
Oh, constantly. They learn, they have their own intelligence. They even learn with homeopathy. They learn with tenderness, they learn with anguish, and then they start behaving differently, protecting themselves, and they communicate with others. We have trillions of cells, and it's a network of communication. This communication is considered to go faster than light between all our very own cells. It goes like non-local communication. It's a constant state of knowing and making decisions.
It's incredible. And it can influence the DNA, right?
Yep, it will influence the way the DNA expresses itself and is transmitted to the next generation.
Wow. So we can intervene. So we can do something about it, right?
We can as us adults, but of course the glorious moment is pregnancy. But yes, if I am an adult with a certain genetic makeup, there are many, many aspects of that genetic makeup that I can enhance or reverse, that I can hinder.
Okay, it can reverse and hinder as well. Right, okay. That's important. And Sarah, tell me about your experience. I think during the last 15 years, you're attending conferences about this theme, right?
Yeah. I mean, really, it's more the last 34 years that I've been
your whole life, yeah.
I've been taken to them, consciously paying attention. Yeah, about 15 years of like,
okay.
Oh yeah, this makes sense. Like I've heard this before, and I always loved it because I knew most of the speakers, whether it was APA or other different conferences, and it was an excuse to kind of, learn more about it, travel with my mom, depending on where the conference was, and just be surrounded by lovely people. So I grew up thinking it was all very normal and that everyone knew all of this, of course. And then
it was all very normal. Why shouldn't it be?
Yeah, very normal. Like, do you not know this? Like 1 + 1 = 2. Treat pregnant women well, and it'll change humanity. And then I learned, no, it was not a normal thing that was taught to everyone. So, but yeah, I always loved kind of, that was my mom's world, and my dad's world was like film, television, all that kind of the industry in LA. So it was nice to kind of have those two worlds of kind of peeking into.
And it's interesting because lots of things, as we see it in the documentary you directed, a lot of the common sense says something, but here you have a scientific layer, and which is quite interesting. Something is common sense, but at another level, right?
Yeah. No, it's been really cool these last, I guess since I've been alive, to kind of see things that my mom had been saying and all these experts had been saying, but now it's even more experts and it's more in the kind of mainstream science of, in a way of where kind of what my mom was saying before it was like, no, you can do whatever you want. You can smoke while you're pregnant, you can drink, you can do all these things. It won't matter to the baby. And then people were like, wait, actually some babies, it does matter a lot. So maybe depending on your baby, you shouldn't. So
it's interesting in the documentary. We will see the trailer. It's interesting when they talk about mothers of politicians. Yeah.
Yes, Suzanne Arms kind of brings it up in the documentary, going, what happened when your mom was pregnant? Like maybe she wasn't okay because you have an interesting look on life and you like destroying things, and that's not what happened there.
She's a great journalist, Suzanne Arms, and she wrote in the 70s, Immaculate Deception. You know, when you get to the hospital, you're pregnant, you're going to have your baby, and you end up with a C-section. That was completely unexpected. And that's really, you've been deceived. But why would the system deceive you? And that book was a bestseller.
Was it translated into Portuguese?
No. Not even in French, not even in Spanish. No.
How about it, Laura and Sarah?
Well, we didn't go to school in Portuguese. We didn't go to school in Portuguese. I'm joking.
No, that we didn't.
Okay, but when you were talking, Laura, about epigenetics, it's quite young, right? This scientific side. You said 90s, in the 90s.
Yes, the 90s, the beginning of the century, when finally science got, the scientific people got together and totally admitted the idea of epigenetics. Officially, it was 2008. But I was hearing things about epigenetics with Bruce Lipton and others at the beginning of the 90s. And there in this field, there's so many question marks because that gives us such freedom. We are not the slaves of our genes anymore. No matter how your genes are, you can improve so much. And it depends on how you live, how you go about life. So it's beautiful.
Yeah. Shall we watch the trailer of the documentary, perhaps? That's not a bad idea. Let me share the screen here. Let's see. Compartilhar tela. See if that works. Cross fingers.
I think the power of a pregnant woman is that she can help shape the future of humanity.
A pregnant mother carries the future in her very being.
Os adultos de hoje são o fruto do que eles receberam do ventre da mãe deles.
Our life experiences interact with our genes to influence how our genes actually work.
Cells are constantly interacting with their environment, and there's no question that cells can learn and remember.
E ao longo da vida, a nossa vida pré-natal é como uma trilha sonora a qual nós seremos fiéis.
The woman carrying a child is the most precious resource a society has.
E a psicohistória, ela prova a correlação entre o início da vida e o restante do que vai acontecer com a sociedade.
Whoops, here we are again. Great. Sarah, tell us about that documentary. It was originally directed by Alexandre Piccini, right?
Yeah, and I remember my mom telling me, yeah, we're gonna make a documentary. They were gonna do a conference, and then it became, well, why don't we just turn it into a documentary? That way it can reach a wider audience than just those who can travel to Brazil. And I was very excited and happy for them, and like a little cheerleader from another continent. And yeah, yay! And then they actually came in, the whole team, Alexandre, his wife, Carol, and Mafe, and my mom stayed with me in my little tiny, like, 2-bedroom in like beginning of, no, like October 2019. Yeah.
Okay,
And
it was already the COVID era, right?
Just before COVID.
Just
So
before,
this was
okay.
when we had no idea what was about to happen. So blissfully unaware. And they stayed with me. They went to an APA conference in Denver, and that's where they shot the vast majority of the interviews. And then after that, they went to Greece and Italy and continued traveling. And the plan was for them to shoot all the Brazilian interviews and footage in 2020. And so then, unfortunately, the pandemic happened and lockdown and all that, and they weren't able to shoot anything in Brazil. So then things it kind of got put on hold. And then suddenly in, I think it was October, beginning of November of 2020, Alexandre suddenly passed away. And it was just devastating because he was a lovely person, and it left his wife and 2 daughters, and just this giant hole of, well, what do we do now? And it wasn't until about July, August of 2021 that a friend had asked my mom, well, why don't you ask Sarah to direct it? Because they'd been asking a few people here and there, would this interest you? We have about 20 hours of footage. And a lot of people just they were too busy at the time. But
busy, and they also wanted to put something else. But then we need to put breastfeeding, and then we need to put birth, and else it's pregnancy. And first years of life, it's so important. Yes, it is. But this documentary will be on pregnancy, and it didn't seem to hit a chord in them. So,
wow.
And meanwhile, I was at home because COVID kind of took away all immersive theater, which is what I had been working on since like 2013. And so I was just kind of sitting at home going, when can I act again? What's happening? And she texted me and said, hey, do you have a second? I'm about to hop in a meeting, but I need to ask you a question. I was like, yeah, I'm home. What's up? And she goes, hey, would you want to direct the documentary? And she's like, you can think about it. You don't have to answer right now, but she's like, we'd send you all the footage and you would have free reign. You could edit it, tell the story however you want. Nothing, we're not going to tell you what we thought we were going to do. It's just what you want to do. And in that moment, it was
perfect. You're the perfect person at the right moment to do that.
I never knew that. See how we can be blinded by being too much in the reality?
Well, she even said, when our friend suggested it, she was like, no, Sarah doesn't want that. No, like, she's not going to want to direct this. And in the moment, I was like, it was such a huge honor. Like, I never thought of it because I didn't think they would want, I even asked her, I was like, is it okay that I don't have kids? Like, I'm not from that. I'm just an actress. And like, yes, I've been attending the conferences for the last 15 years, but it's very different than someone who's really dedicated their life to pre-imperial psychology. And when I asked her that, I was like, is it okay that I don't have kids? That, like, I want kids one day, but I don't have them now. I've never been pregnant.
Well, that's good because you're very, an outsider.
She was like, it might actually be good that you don't have
knowledge. Perfect.
She's like, we have all had kids, so we're biased. So it's good that you can come in and be like, well, I don't know. Here you go. So they sent me all the footage, and I decided to just sit down and watch it all the way through once.
How many hours of watching?
About 20 hours.
Okay.
So I cut it up over like about 2 days, just kind of in front of my computer watching it. with no idea of what I was going to do. I really didn't know. Yeah, I was just like, you know what? Before I figure things out, let's just watch it. And it was actually then later on a conversation I had with my boyfriend after I'd finished all the 20 hours of footage. I said, okay, like this is a huge responsibility. Like I get a say in how this story gets told. And
that's it. Editing.
Exactly. And he said, well, I feel like a lot of what your mom talks about is kind of what comes from nature, like what's nurture and nature, kind of what can we control, what can't we control, what can someone do. And I kind of liked that because it's like, oh, I've never thought of it from that angle of breaking prenatal psychology down into, hey, this is the thing, these are the things you can control, these are the things you cannot control, so don't even worry about it. And so then I decided to rewatch all the hours of footage, but this time in an editing app, and just kind of anytime there was something that someone said that reminded me of either nature versus nurture, I would pull it down into kind of the main file. And then over the next few weeks, just sort of started editing things together and like, oh, that goes, what that person said goes well with that person. And a lot of people ended up saying a lot of the same things. There wasn't really a restriction. Some people spoke for 20 minutes, some for 10 minutes, and others for an hour and a half. And it was really a conversation. It just flowed really nicely. And I mean, they were all told the title. So they knew it was Pregnancy and Civilization, the Power of Pregnant Women Over Our Future. And then there was also the moment of, okay, well, these three people said the exact same thing. Who said it in a way that someone who's never heard of prenatal psychology or epigenetics, who would they understand it best from? Who said it in the most concise way and just harmonious and also clear and efficient? Because if someone's kind of stumbling to find the words, it may take 5 minutes to say what someone else said in 2 minutes.
Yeah, wonderful, because it's good for many audiences.
Yes,
yeah, great.
I wanted someone who knew nothing about it to be able to watch it, someone who knew everything about it, but also not just for people who want to have kids one day, but for someone to kind of also look at it and go, well, I was a kid. My mom was pregnant with me at some point. How is this affecting me? So that was my kind of thought process. And then
it's interesting to see you used an editing app, and there's an evolution during the narrative of your film. So because as you said, explain it and then go on and then come to contemporary issues like big cities and our future and how can we escape, blah blah blah. Okay.
Yeah, how is a teacher interviewing you? Now you see she's a person who taught literature. You see Claudia has this whole background. She could see your narrative. It's very interesting. I just would like to make a parenthesis. Nature versus nurture has been a huge fight, inato e adquirido in Portuguese. And then suddenly comes epigenetics and says, hey guys, they go hand in hand. They both exist. So let's quit arguing. Let's use our energies to something else. That was the big gift of epigenetics. It goes hand in hand. There's nature and there's the nurture that transforms. One transforms the other, and there's a beautiful dance.
And I see this evolution, and I think in the middle of the documentary, there's a woman, I don't remember who. She says about she knew her mother only when she was 15, at 15, something like that.
Yeah, and I remember that.
Yeah, and it's so important to know. If we ask people here in the audience or whoever, have you ever asked how was your conception and what happened during your pregnancy? I mean, the pregnancy of your mother when she was expecting you. Did you ever question this situation, and this woman asked her mother to write a diary about her pregnancy. It's that thick, no? And she said, "Wow, now I understand lots of things that happened to me, because it has directly to do with the pregnancy of my mother, when she was kind of kidnapped in the back of the car."
Yeah, and she has her hands, yeah.
Yeah. So my question is, that's very interesting. My question is, how did that work with you and your mother? Because I know your mother deals with that daily, and you grew up with that. And how was it? Tell us a bit about that, your relation. Looking at this question of pregnancy and etc.
Yeah, my mom never wrote anything down to tell me this is what happened, but between her and my dad, they would talk about how they wanted to have a child, and kind of from conception until birth, even the birth itself, kind of little details here and there. And my mom saying, "Oh, you didn't let me eat basil." This is like, "You let me eat many things." That was immediately no. And to this day, I will take basil off. I will never say don't put basil on whatever's on me, but
what's the problem with basil?
It's just one of those around like
friends, and the basil leaves were there, and I would go to eat them. There was a no inside. Okay, then no.
Poor basil.
Poor basil. I don't know what happened, but yeah, and how they would go to sunrise meditations and think about they try to come up with different virtues or things that they wanted to like me to have in my life as an adult, and kind of go through the alphabet, like A, B, C, and different things that corresponded to those letters. And just the joy of, we're pregnant, we get to have a baby. And they also got invited onto the board of APA, well, right? That was while you were pregnant.
Yeah, the Association of Prenatal and Perinatal Psychology and Health. And we were both on the board, and we had just conceived her. It's amazing how life has its own script, right?
But yeah, so I'm sure a lot of the way that my parents viewed the world was definitely kind of trickled down into me in the womb. But it was definitely a very loving and calm and tranquil environment.
And this influenced also the way you did your documentary. And because it's you have many languages there, many countries, many specialities. You have psychiatrists, researchers from many countries, specialists, etc. And they talk. They talk in many different ways, as you said, but it's not only the interviews. You have the importance of the music in your documentary.
Yes.
How did you solve that question?
We were incredibly lucky in that a dear friend of ours, Gilles, when we had told him we were making the documentary, he immediately said, "Hey, any of the songs that I've recorded and arranged and all that, you can have them." So he's like, "Go to the YouTube page, listen to any of them, and just let me know." So I had downloaded a few, or kind of saved the YouTube link to a few of them, thinking like, "Ooh, okay, I really like this one. I connect with this one." And then my dear friend Matt, who was our official editor, and that he kind of, because I did we called it the talking heads version of just, here are all the interviews, and maybe 3 people will be able to watch it and love it, but maybe we need to add some music and images and all that. And Matt helped, between the two of us, he really helped kind of bring it to life in a beautiful way with images. And I'd sent him the music, and I had said, these, with the little asterisks, like, these ones are like my favorites, but let's have a listen to this whole thing. And I think the vast majority is that there were a few that he had that were free, kind of anyone can grab online for free, but the vast majority were from Gilles. And
Gilles was able to direct the musicians he has in Canada, but the music was written by Peter Deneuve, a spiritual master from Bulgaria towards the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. And he is a very mystical person. And he would compose with his violin, and his disciples would take note of that music, sometimes would even come up with words. And Sarah was exposed a lot during pregnancy to that music. So it's interesting how it goes full circle. And
yeah, because Peter Danoff was the spiritual master of Omram Mikhail Ivanov, who was the spiritual master of my parents, and how they met, and who introduced prenatal psychology to my mom. And so there's that kind of whole...
And it has to do also with Rudolf Steiner.
Yeah.
Anthroposophy.
Yes. Rudolf Steiner spoke about Omram, saying that when they would come, a person under the Mikhail age, and would give this teaching under the sign of enthusiasm, because that was a big differential of Omram, his enthusiasm. And which Steiner was an extraordinary teacher, extraordinary mystic. He did not have this enthusiasm. It was different. It was another time. And but yes, and it's all one universal science. That we call it initiatic science. And you can go back to ancient India, ancient China. It's one humongous great philosophy, which differed completely from psychology. In psychology, when I was studying in France in the 70s, if you think this way, you go into that school, and it will never meet what that school of psychology says. And I was so tired of that. I don't want to choose between one school of thought or the other. I want to know how human beings are. And I think heaven had mercy on me and introduced me to the esoteric teaching that I completely got from Omram. And he was the one, as Sarah said, who says there's only hope for humanity that women can gestate properly. They can be pregnant the way nature intended. Then we'll have humans capable of being friends with life.
This would be the ideal world, right? So, yeah, that would be perfect. And talking about music, it's interesting when one of the interviewed persons, one of them is ending a speech, then you start in a very subtle way, the music which ends in which ends in an image. I recognize Ipanema there. I think
yes,
at minute 50 or something like that.
I needed. There were a few Ipanema and Rio shots. It was a necessity because when we lost Ale, he was the one who not only was he the director, he was the director of photography, he was the editor, he was the everything of the project. And when he passed, we lost all the kind of the plans of all the grandiose footage of Brazil. And it became a much more, I mean, it was going to be an international documentary, but it was going to have a lot of Brazil. And so I was like, well, since we can't show the Brazil that was planned, I need to buy some images of Ipanema and Rio, because just to kind of show.
That you asked me a very interesting question. Matt illustrated a talk of Michael Trout on the Holocaust, and suddenly came a music that was extremely beautiful. And you asked me, is it okay to have beautiful song for something so sad being said? And I thought it was a very interesting thing. There's a big philosophy in there. Now I would ask you,
I viewed it as such a happy song. And you said, no, Sarah, it's a beautiful song, but it's not a happy song. It's a very sad song. I was like, oh, okay. If that's how everyone else views it, then
that's the beauty of music. You can interpret one way or the other. But isn't that a great question, Claudia? What will illustrate? The song will help me go along with that sad idea, will kind of take care of me with its beauty.
It reminds me of the program yesterday. I interviewed André Bushatsky, who made a documentary interviewing survivors of the Holocaust. And one of the survivors, she's called Sarah. She's a pianist, and she's playing the piano and talking about all that sad stories. And she's playing a sonata on the piano. In German, it's Mondschein Sonate from Beethoven, which is so beautiful as a background of that sad stories. So it's unbelievable. Yeah, it's exactly that.
Yeah, the minute that Matt sent us over the kind of the version with all of the music in place, because we had said, oh, let's do this, let's do that. And then the minute it was like the finalized version with the music, there was like a click in that, oh, okay, this is, we have a documentary for real now.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I constantly make these relations with the other program, because the title of this other documentary with the survivors is a little bit about me, a little bit about us, because it's the whole humanity.
Yeah.
We are responsible for it, and it has everything to do with what you're saying here, right? It's fantastic. Tell people how they can where they can watch the documentary.
So right now we've been doing a little bit of a fundraiser. It's a little bit in limbo. There's some talks of distribution, but in the meantime, we want to kind of make it so that until a solid deal is reached, they can go to, so there's the Vimeo page that explains it all. I think in English, French, Portuguese, and Spanish, where you donate 35 reais, which is roughly
$10.
Yeah, roughly $10. Then we will send you through email the code for like the kind of VIP code to be able to rent it on Vimeo for 48 hours. So you get 2 whole days.
48 hours, counting from the moment you press play. You have 48 hours. We're selling it to a company. We're still in the signing contracts and everything. It's a distribution company and a production company also for movies. It's of many women. And before the end of the year, I was told yesterday, we should know what is going on. We might create a buzz later on in November, a mediatic buzz in a cinema in São Paulo, or
wow, great
whole experience, perhaps another one in Rio. We'll see. But they loved film because some people think it's only for a small crowd, and we tell them it's for everybody. We should know the stuff we're made out of. We come from the thoughts and feelings of our parents, of our soul, of our creator. We come with a lot of luggage once the day we're born. We take the first breath. The zodiac gives us its seal. We already are a complete human being right there. Now the body's going to grow, but already our terrain is being designed. Okay, we can change things later on, but let's give the best design to every baby arriving on Earth.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's linked directly to the Brazilian Association of Prenatal Education, right?
Yeah.
Yep. They were my bosses when I would send over a cut and be like, what do you guys think? And they'd be like, that's great. Let's cut that clip and that clip. But other than that, perfect.
Yes, we exist since 2010.
Okay.
And there are some 22 ANEPs around the world, National Associations for Prenatal Education. And we have plenty of people coming to like a 18-month training. And it's now practically everything online. But it's a universal theme that we can spend hours talking about catecholamines and endorphins and neurophysiology, or in an elevator pitch, treat well pregnant women. You'll see the difference when the next generation is in power, in science, in education, in politics. I mean, every human being has a responsibility. You might be somebody like a gardener or a milkman, but the ambiance you bring wherever you go, can be a politician too, or somebody at Wall Street. That quality of who you are should be just gorgeous. We shouldn't have less envy and fear and anguish and lack of self-love, lack of love for others or the environment. why are we so behind our potential? Well, let's activate that potential, arriving on Earth with extraordinary, let's say, it's not a matter of luck, but let's see the beauty of life. And for that, governments should be aware of it, and institutions. We should provide places of beauty, of well-being for pregnant women. And it's possible. I know that in the documentary we hear about this midwife in Florida who decided to take the most needy population and enhance the experience of their pregnancy. And there they are. These people are now more receptive to life. So we can do so much.
Yeah, that's a great example. And more resilient, facing problems or difficulties. It's quite important, and not only accepting things as they are, right?
Yeah.
And that's quite interesting. What would you say to people? That is an example, this woman, but when you think of people living in the outskirts of great cities in Brazil, for instance, in slums, where the environment is really, full of...
They are the easiest to embrace. They taught me so much. I started in my early 20s. I was in the favelas, they call it, in Rua do Bispo. They're amazingly receptive. First, it's something that inside they know. Somehow we all went from cell to baby. So we have some memory, not an explicit memory, but an implicit memory of what happened. And they know the most difficult ones to help are the very rich, because their lives seem to be completely outside with all their successes and the problems with a helicopter to go to Angra dos Reis. And then their children will go to extraordinary universities, but then they can end up in Harvard devising weapons of mass destruction out of biology. This is criminal. But they will be rewarded with big salaries. Our society is sick. In America, we have 5% of the world population and 25% of inmates of the whole world, of the inmates. So something is going wrong. We have too many prisoners. People are maladjusted to life. And if people in the favelas or the outskirts of the big cities are suffering so much, they kind of receive with a great smile the news that it's within themselves that they have the power. When they sing to a baby in their womb, when they take a shower, there's so many things we can talk with them. Try to speak with somebody who has everything, materially speaking. They are still anguished. They still go to the psychiatrist. They still go to the obstetrician.
They can pay for a psychiatrist.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that the more this knowledge becomes mainstream, the more surprises we will have, because it can touch just about anybody, from the very bright to the very rich, from those who have goodwill and those who are suffering deep into depression. There are lights that come, and then they can start owning it, being more masters of themselves, knowing that their situation might be a result of many other things already lived by their own parents when they were still a baby in the womb. So I'm being very almost simplistic here, but we have seen people transforming their lives thanks to 2 or 3 information of this kind, 2 or 3 elements. They say, aha, and then they feel free to be who they want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as one of the interviewees says in the film, there are some things you can't buy, the things that matter you can buy. You can't buy the sun, you can buy love.
No.
It's not possible to buy that. Love, the sun, whatever, natural light, things like that. The emotions, yes. You can buy them. Can't
a great
buy.
Teacher in an important university in Athens, she had arrived that day from London. And she wanted to be there and speak. And what an example, this woman. Because if you're academia, I mean, universities, you could be a little snob about all your knowledge on catecholamines. No, you speak about the real things that really matter are for free. I admire her.
Yeah. And it's interesting. People need people who just tell me more about that. I don't know about that. And when you instantly, when you say, okay, there's scientific research behind that, and there's a university professor, and then and all of a sudden people go and say, wow, it's science.
Yeah. And Claudia, you love the director of a big maternity, royal maternity in Athens. Is every baby, like, he's so much into what he's saying. It's an amazing being. He's great friends with Ioanna Mari, the philosopher, that speaks so beautifully about the golden rules for pregnancy, and she speaks about
the 10 golden rules, right?
Yeah.
The 10 golden rules. But that director, when we were filming at the maternity, he said, it's so good to have that freedom because he's old enough. He has seen so much. Every baby deserves to be here with loving parents. Wow, what a lesson.
Yeah. It reminds me of another short film I interviewed here. She's from Israel, but lives between São Paulo and New York. Her name is Ayelet Vardi. And she makes only short films, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. And she made one in the favela in Rio, Complexo do Alemão, the story of a girl called Tuani. And Tuani loved to dance. She danced, but she had no money. Her family had no money. And she danced on the where the people played soccer. It rained and it's full of mud. And she had her ballerina clothes on, and she just danced. And the little girls around her, they admired her, and she just danced, and they said, wow, how beautiful. And then she asked them, would you like to learn that? And the little girl said, yes. Okay. And then she started teaching them there. There was nothing. And it grew. Now she has a social program. She's financed, and she teaches those children who are going to dance. It's such a wonderful work and initiative. It's great. It's exactly that.
Yes. Imagination, your inner world, your inner life. This is what teaches the baby inside, and this will teach the baby outside also, because you can say many things. The baby or the child, they read right through you. I mean, amazing. You have to walk your talk, otherwise the baby won't listen to anything. And the teenager less.
And videos like this one you directed, Sarah, they are so important, because one thing is to talk about it. The other thing is to watch images, which are so powerful nowadays, and they say so much to modern audiences. So it's so important. And my question is, do you have projects with the same, something similar for the future, or?
Not at the moment. Unfortunately, with the SAG-AFTRA strike, even more so, like kind of almost like COVID times, it's kind of all at a halt.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the documentary doesn't involve that strike. We're not with the producers, like Alliance of America and all that. But there is, it's been, but definitely I keep thinking about it. But one thing that was also nice is that those are all, for the most part, people that I've known for most of my life in the documentary. So it's like Marcy Axness, one of my mom's closest friends. So we saw her in December. So I still feel kind of like the documentary is still alive, and they're like, oh, but I see these people, like they're my friends.
Yeah. Good. But for sure you'll do something similar in the future. And then you come back and tell us about it. Sorry, Laura?
She has the acting virus. This girl,
she has the acting virus.
She loves taking directions from directors. You know how much the directors love acting and actors love directing? Yes, but her real thing is
acting.
Yeah.
It's acting. Ah, that's great. But let me ask you something. Is it too? Is it an utopia? Is it utopic to think that the world will? What do you think in 30, 50 years? We will be nearer to an ideal world or whatever. What do we need for a change? Do we have to change politicians for first? Where shall we start?
I think changing politicians would be a great start. Let's get some new, maybe kinder, more emotionally intelligent politicians around the world. I definitely see some hope. I know that there are people who are extremely pessimistic when they think of the future, but even just an app like TikTok that unites kind of everyone from all over the world, which most social media does, there's a lot of beauty on those apps of people coming together from all over the world and wanting to see the good in people and wanting people to succeed and kindness kind of winning. Like, yeah, there are always some online bullies, but I love seeing how many people stand up to those online bullies and go, no, that's not okay. We're not doing that. You don't get to treat someone else that way. So
but you told me that some of your friends, once they saw the documentary, they told you, our generation needs to know about that. There's an urgency, because I think that Claudia is asking you, do you think this kind of knowledge is a key to change the world?
I think so. And I think a lot of people kind of are knowing it in an almost unconscious, like in their subconscious, where it's like, okay, we need to be kind to one another. And what does that look like when a world where no one's mean to a pregnant woman or her baby, and we grow up in like, kind of, what are those effects? And what if we healed generational trauma and acknowledged that it exists for many cultures who like, just because, oh, but you're fine now, why are you worried about it? It's like, well, I'm fine now, but maybe my ancestors were not fine. So that weighs heavily on you.
Yeah, and it's, you're talking to a generation with mothers to be. So that's so important.
Because it's good to kind of, if you acknowledge that there is trauma in your lineage, whether it be from race or religion or anything, there's that, if you acknowledge it and kind of, if you shine a light on it, it's not as terrifying, and you can kind of break the cycle of trauma and help heal. So then, every human being born after that is more free, because you're like, oh, okay, it's like getting a cut on your hand. Like, okay, I cut my hand, but now it's healed, so it's fine. Like, it doesn't hurt anymore.
I also imagine a world where every child is conceived out of love. Okay, one day it will be out of consciousness and wanting a child, but at least let there be love. Because this is the correct elements, energetically speaking, for a correct beginning of all those very first cells that will multiply and become a baby. So love is something very important. Can we marry sex with love? It would be so great. Love making exists, but very often without love. Can we bring back love into love making, especially when a child is being conceived? I can sense within me a resolve for humanity 50 years after a whole generation, everybody being conceived out of love. So then we have so many other things to worry about. All the preconception is important. So what schools would know, how do we transmit this kind of knowledge? There's a lot to be.
Well, it's kind of like what Joel Evans says, is that if this information is taught to everyone and just kind of freely available, then if it's repeated again and again and again, by the time someone is going to have a kid, whether it's planned or it's a whoops, we're pregnant kind of baby, then it's not a new concept. It's there. Like, maybe they'll be like, oh yeah, I remember learning about that in school, and yeah, this is important. Okay, I can try to heal some trauma, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and talk about it in schools, for instance, at home, conscious parents, etc., etc. It's very important.
And having movies, and having Broadway plays, and then having telenovelas, and having the arts and music. bringing this understanding, this profound understanding of how beginnings are important, which, by the way, is something taught in quantum physics. At the very beginning, look at the very beginning, you'll see the ending. And for the Indians, the traditional story in India, in the Vedas, conception is the most important moment of our life, like a fractal that you throw and that will influence all the further developments. So it's a universe. The more you open doors, the more mysteries you will address as you go. But it can be exhilarating to see the possibilities of communion with life. And here we are to partake communion with life.
Wonderful. These are wonderful closing words. Because I could keep here talking to you for hours and hours. It's so interesting. But we have a limited time. I'm so sorry for that. Thank you, Sarah, very much for that wonderful doc. I hope lots and lots and lots and millions of people watch that doc.
Would love that.
Yeah, that would be great.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much to both of you. And now the screen is yours. You can say whatever you want. The closing words. Feel free.
Go ahead.
Me? Okay. Well, everyone, whether you were brought into this world with love or angst or anything, you got this. We're all here for you. And yeah, we're all your brothers and sisters, and you got this. You're not alone.
Yeah. I think my last words will be for film lovers, the seventh art. And it's so good when our imagination can craft gorgeous works of art to inspire millions. If there are any writers, script writers, I wish you the best of inspiration. Let's move forward as a civilization, thanks to the understanding of the great beings who shed so much light into what is important for our development.
And all that can happen once the writers, the WGA, get the pay that they deserve once they're no longer on strike.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Keep these words from Laura and Sarah in your mind. And see you sometime. You'll be back at Cine dELA sometime. Okay. You have here the Instagrams. Laura Uplinger, Sarah Uplinger, if you want to contact them and see what they're doing around the world, just go there. Okay. Thank you to the audience. Obrigada, plateia, now in Portuguese as well. See you at the next Cine dELA. Keep in touch. We'll be back here on backstage, but it's good night to the audience, but we'll stay here, okay? So, see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Clara.